Good afternoon or good morning, or perhaps even good evening, at least in the case of one of our panelists. And welcome to the panel, That Skinny Bundle Isn't So Skinny Anymore. I'm Eric Schumacher-Rasmussen. I'm the editor and VP of Streaming Media, and I'm also the conference chair for our streaming media events. This is our 6th online event, and I've always said before each of our previous ones, we will see you in person next time. I'm not going to make that promise this time. I don't want to jinx things. Not that I think I actually have that much impact on the fates, but we are planning to have Streaming Media East in person in Boston on May 24th and 25th of 2022. In the meantime, we'll be having another Streaming Media Connect event in February, cleverly called Streaming Media Connect February. And we'll be putting out the call for speakers for both of those events relatively soon. So keep your eyes open for information about both of those events. And thank you again for joining this online event. Just a few housekeeping notes before we jump into the discussion. If you have questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A tab rather than the chat. The chat is open, and I see some people saying hello, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to see your questions there if you put your questions for the panelists there. So if you could put them in the Q&A, that will guarantee that I will see them and make sure we share them with the panelists. If we run out of time for questions from the audience, I will do my best to save those questions and forward them to our panelists after the event is over. Also, we do have live transcripts on. If you want to turn them off on your screen, you can go to the live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom window, click on that, and then click disable subtitles, and that turns them off. Finally, just for being here, you are registered into a drawing to win a $50 Amazon gift card. But here's the catch. You got to stick around till the end when we announce the winner. And once we do that, you'll also be able to look out in your email to see if you've won, but you must be present to win. I'd like to thank our diamond sponsors, Conviva, Limelight Network, Signient, and Video Guys for sponsoring all of Streaming Media West. And we have short video messages from each of them now. So I'll ask Mike, our producer, to roll that video.
VideoGuys.com is your source for PTZ cameras that fit productions of all sizes.
Add multiple camera angles to your production without adding operator. Perfect for houses of worship, corporate AV, education, and more. Video Guys offers cameras from PTZ Optics, Bird Dog, Panasonic, and NewTek. Control these cameras using an IR remote, control app, or hardware controller with serial or network connection.
Go to VideoGuys.com or call us at 800-323-2325 for help finding the camera that's right for you.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.
And I'd also like to thank the sponsor of this panel, Kaltura. And Kaltura's Miguel Rodrigues will be joining us to talk about the skinny bundle. And when I put this panel together, I sort of used the phrase skinny bundle as a metaphor, referring, of course, to the classic cable bundle, but also using it more broadly to refer to all manner of bundles and aggregators that are in the market right now. So we'll be talking about any type of bundle that exists in the broadcast, cable, and OTT world. And I've got a great group of panelists here today. And I know I said I'd ask you to turn your cameras on individually, but how about if everyone brings their cameras up, and I'll go around the room and ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Brett Sappington. Brett.
Hi, thanks, Eric. Glad to be here. My name is Brett Sappington. I'm Vice President of Video Entertainment and Interpret. I lead the video entertainment research practice here at Interpret. Interpret's about a 15-year-old market research firm, and we specialize in a variety of areas. As I mentioned, mine is video, where we have a variety of research information and services related to all aspects of entertainment.
Terrific. Next up is Randy Ahn from Roku. Randy.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Eric, thank you so much for having me here. I'm Randy Ahn. I lead our premium subscriptions business, which is our aggregated SVOD channels model. Premium subscriptions exist within the Roku channel, which is our direct-to-consumer video service offering. We've got over 80,000 movie and TV series, 200 plus FAST channels, and over 50 SVODs, reaching an estimated 70 million people within the Roku channel. And I'm very happy to be here and excited to talk about bundles.
Terrific. Next up is Basil Al-Khatib. Basil, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to chat with everyone. So I'm a co-founder of FrndlyTV. We are a affordable live TV service for the whole family. So we provide what Eric calls it, kind of that skinny bundle, but in a more targeted and direct way, where we target a very specific audience at a very attractive price point. We offer over 20 live channels for just $5.99. So we are trying to do something a little bit different and offer people choices at an affordable price.
Terrific. And next up, Miguel Rodrigues from Kaltura.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me. So I'm Miguel Rodrigues. I'm the SVP of product in Kaltura. Kaltura basically helps videofy your business. So whether you're doing virtual events, or you're doing education, or if you're a telco, or just a media company that basically wants to go direct to consumer, we can help transform what you have today into a fully video business. So that's basically our target.
Terrific. So we've got a great mix of perspectives here today. We've got Brett, the analyst. We've got Randy from an aggregator. We've got Bassil from a video service that he referred to himself as something of a skinny bundle. And then we've got the enabling technology behind some of these services. So again, a great mix of perspectives. And as I said before, maybe we should start by talking about definitions and talking about the terms we're using. And so Brett, let's start with you. What's the difference between a bundle and an aggregator, and what role will each of those play going forward? And again, once the first person answers a question, feel free to chime in, and let's make sure this is a conversation rather than just me asking questions.
You bet. So it's interesting, in the industry right now, there are a lot of different definitions, particularly around this idea of aggregation and bundling. Generally, bundling is tactical. It's bringing things together and providing an incentive for people to buy those things together in a single offering. Often they have a discount, but not always. In some cases, it's packaging. So it's allowing consumers to make one decision to buy multiple things, and others, a bundle is about marketing. So it's promotion to attract customers. Aggregation is very different. Aggregation is much more strategic. It's really more of a business model or a business approach. And in that, there's a value in having a number of things together as a collection. Really necessary when you have areas where there's a lot of fragmentation and it's difficult for consumers to even know what all of the options are. There can be a discount for aggregators, but not always. Really, again, the value is in the collection and in bringing it all together. In terms of what the role is, I think there's going forward, there's going to be more and more different types of aggregation. We've seen aggregation in pay TV, so where pay TV providers are aggregators, and in that way, companies like Frndly are aggregating channels. But we're seeing aggregation in OTT services and in a number of things. Fast channels, it's another type of aggregation. So we see a lot of variety in what aggregation is today.
Yeah, just to add to that, I also think that based on what Brett was saying, that usually bundling to me feels more like something that you control. And in aggregation, I don't feel that as much. So usually in bundling, it's, typically it used to be that you already have some channels and you already know what you're working with. And recently aggregation has led us to a lot of just partnerships really, and making sure that when you put all those partnerships together, some of which you might not even have any billing control whatsoever, but you're just saying you have the service. And I think when you have aggregation, people expect more of you. They expect, you now have these, 5, 6 services that you're aggregating. What are you putting on top of that? What is the value that you're putting? Are you doing a search on top of that? So I kind of feel that when you talk about aggregation, people expect there are a couple of features that come with aggregation. It's not just bringing those guys into your platform, is what are you doing on top of this kind of set of new contents that you have?
Yeah, go ahead, Basil.
Go ahead. So I was just going to say, with aggregation from a consumer standpoint, a lot of times, and feel free to disagree with this, people think that it's an elimination of choice. It is that you're aggregating and providing that to the consumer. So whatever's in that, you get. With bundling, it provides an element of choice. It's you can or cannot. I want X or I don't want X. So for example, like the Disney bundle, right? It allows you to pick. You can take each one individually, or you can take them all as a discount. So it's always one I was looking at as going aggregation. Does it eliminate a little bit of consumer choice, while bundling is still that element of choice?
Yeah, at Roku with premium subscriptions, we're clearly an aggregator model. We've brought in, we ingested, we host, we are responsible for the billing, the curation, the marketing of over 50 different SVODs, including Showtime, Stars, AMC Plus. And bringing it into a single user experience, which we call the Roku channel. The Roku channel itself is also an aggregation play. We have, as I mentioned, fast channels, a large AVOD library. It's about bringing together all these different formats, experiences, genres into a single experience that is ideally the best for the user and best for the viewer. When we think about premium subscriptions and the aggregation opportunity, it's really about bringing out the best features that come with that, and from a consumer perspective. And so there's a very easy sign up flow, for example, so you don't have to go and individually sign up for each of the SVODs you want to sign up for. It's a single click, and then you're able to be subscribed to one of these SVODs. We also aggregate the viewing experience. And so we have an aggregated continue watching row across all of your SVODs. So you can watch something from Shameless or from Showtime, like Shameless, watch something from AMC Plus, like The Walking Dead. Seeing them all together in a single row and on a single homepage makes it really easy to discover and find the content that you want. And so those are some of the value propositions. Those are some of the benefits of an aggregated experience. When we talk about bundles within premium subscription, we really think about, and I think Brett said it well, in terms of a discounted opportunity or an offer, right? And so we really see it as an opportunity to offer a discounted price by purchasing, for example, multiple SVODs in one payment flow. Some of the discounts average from 15% to 29%. We offer 4 different bundles today, one of them being Showtime and BET Plus, which is 29% off the price when you buy them individually a la carte. But at the same time, we also offer the user the opportunity to purchase them a la carte. And so you can purchase BET Plus separately. You can purchase Showtime separately, as well as Stars. And so really it's that optionality. If you want to bundle those together and get a discount, we also offer that discount for the duration of your subscription. So it's not a promotional tool for us. It's just a way of offering a discount to the user if they're interested in those combined services.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a couple of really interesting things there that we've seen in the research we've done. We've kind of looked at different types of aggregation, and there seem to be 4 big categories, and you mentioned a number of them. First of all, discovery. Bringing it together by having it all together and allowing discovery of content across a number of services or across a number of fast channels or something. There's value to consumers in being able to bring it together. Some of it is having the different services together. So now you're integrating services and service choice, or it could be content offerings. It could be account management. So those are kind of 4 big areas. You mentioned a number of those, which is interesting with Roku, because with Roku, you could have bundles within an aggregator. You could have aggregation within an aggregator. So so it's not an easy cut and dry thing.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to think about what are the things that today you can put on top of that aggregation to say that you have more value than a normal bundle would have. And you were mentioning, Randy, you were mentioning one of them, like a single billing flow. Most people still don't trust like putting my credit card on 100 different apps. So they still want to feel that confidence that, I trust this single entity and I'll put my credit card into the single entity, but then I don't need to do that in everywhere else. And I think when we talk about the people who are doing aggregation, they're probably thinking about what are these advantages? Can I do the single search? Can I do a recommendation engine on top of this? Those are things that you typically don't have in bundling, because bundling is just using whatever features you have in the rest of your service. So at least the way that I see it about these two things is that's one of the big differences in aggregation.
Being an individual kind of app, right? So we have, our main service, but we also have started having add-ons such as Hallmark Movie Now that really fit well with our audience. So, we try and do that within the app, but realistically, some of the other elements that consumers will look for, that's where we look for towards like Roku, for example, is they offer that. I know our service standalone is not going to solve everyone's, all their entertainment needs. We're part of that solution. And so that's something where us being on a Roku and them aggregating and kind of bundling things together really creates that synergy there. And I think a lot of services know that there's what we can do within our own app, but then there's also leveraging kind of the power of, whether it be billing aspect, having people able to use Roku Pay, whether it be, the search functionality, all those elements enhance our service, but also add value to Roku as well. So it's kind of a, interesting what we try and do, and then what we also leverage of services such as Roku.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great description. We're lucky from a premium subscription standpoint that we're the service on top of the platform, and that's exactly what you're describing, is those advantages of partnering closely with the platform and using all the benefits that the platform brings. Frndly, you guys are obviously a great partner, and you guys lean in very, very heavily in terms of all the benefits of being on top of the platform and partnering with the platform. And so premium subscriptions also obviously gets to take advantage of that as being part of Roku.
So one of the things we've seen, we actually did a study, I guess, at the beginning of this year about pain points that consumers have in streaming video. And consistently what we found is when it comes to individual services, consumers don't have a lot of problems. There may be some preferences, but not problems. Where they have problems is whenever all of a sudden they're having to handle multiple services. So now it's like, well, when does this account come? When does this subscription come up during the month? And do I want to renew? And do I even know how much I'm paying? So it's really when you have everything whenever they're having to handle things by themselves for multiple services, that's whenever they begin to really feel kind of the pain of that. In many cases, they don't know what they subscribe to unless they look at their credit card. And that's the only way that they do. And so we consistently heard it's the lack of aggregation, particularly in an account management sense. It's a significant pain point for consumers. And it's one of the reasons why aggregation can be so appealing and powerful for consumers is it allows them greater choice just by knowledge, and it makes it easier for them to do that. And we're only getting more subscriptions. We have subscriptions for meals, for clothes, for pet goods, for all these things now on top of this. And so it's only becoming more complex over time.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point that often does not get talked about is when it comes to aggregation and that business model. And that's really the management of the subscription, and billing is a key part of that. One of the features that we have available is unified billing. And so when you sign up for multiple subscriptions at different dates throughout the year, we end up tying those into a single billing event on a monthly basis. And so it's easy to see what the total of your bill is And then you're able to go into Roku.com and be able to see all your subscriptions easily, even on device. Obviously, within an aggregated view, you can easily manage those subscriptions. We just want transparency to be a big part of this, and that ease of managing those subscriptions is something that I think a lot of subscribers value and continue to value over time.
Yeah, in that study, we asked consumers if they, we asked them to rate different elements of aggregation that they value, and over a third rated extremely highly having all of the accounts in one place. 35% said they really find a lot of value in having everything and managing everything all in one place.
Awesome.
You may have seen me getting a little distracted here. I just sent a note to my good friend, Brett Sappington, asking him if he could take the lead a bit. Have any of you ever had your bathroom flood next to your office while you've been on a Zoom webinar? I at least need to go see what's going on. So.
Okay, so I'm not sure I can top that, Eric, but
I do need to check this out. I do expect to return. My next question, though, I will kick it off with that, was, sort of from a consumer perspective, my thinking about this panel was all the complaints that people had about the bloated cable bundle that they were paying for that led them to say, you know what, I'm cutting the cord, or at least cutting one of the cords, and I want to go to something that's going to be cheaper. I don't have to pay for a bunch of channels I don't want. What's the state of things related to that? And are we headed towards a world where people are going to end up with something similar and bloated? And as they say on the radio, I'll hang up now and listen offline. I'll be back.
I have this picture of him in ankle deep in water right now for some reason.
I know. And just before this, we were having a conversation of all of the odd things that have happened whenever you're on a panel. So welcome to the top 10, everyone. Welcome to the top 10. So
he was very calm for that.
Yeah.
Amazingly calm. Okay. So get on Twitter and tell all your friends about what's going on, everyone. So let's talk about this. The idea of in cable, there was a complaint for a long time, the bloated cable bundle and all of the cable channels. That was a constant thing we've heard from consumers. Now let's look at the OTT space, whether it's virtual MVPDs or OTT services. Are we going back there? Is there a risk we're going back there? Why will or will it not happen?
Do you mind if I
Please.
jump in this one? Yeah. So for me, when people talk about the cable bundle, the root cause was not that they had all the channels they didn't want. It was that the price. It always comes down to the value proposition, right? They're paying how much they were paying for things that they believe they did not want. Since then, the media industry has changed. Now we have all these services that would not fit in traditional cable. But what you see is really people are, they are spending more. They thought initially, hey, I'll just get one service. It would solve all my problems. Well, the problem is there's so much content out there, amazing content. I constantly had this discussion with my wife that, she's like, oh, there's just too much to watch. Well, that's a great thing. I remember when there was nothing good to watch. Now there's so many shows, a list of people that things people want to watch. But the reality is that people are going to get to select what they want. So they're going to build these bundles, their own de facto bundles, right? They're going to pick and choose which services they like and they want. And it could be for a short period of time. They might sit there and say, hey, I'm going to get this for a month or 2 or 3, and then cancel, but then come back maybe another 6 months. And so it's allowing this new behavior that is different than what the old cable bundle. So when people say, oh, it's just going to be this new aggregation. Well, realistically, people are getting choice. And it provides a new behaviors. You have people doing different things than they would before. And I think that's a great thing. And yes, people are going to be paying more, but they get to control it. It's up to them. If they don't want to, guess what? For a month or 2, they can switch the service off. It's interesting seeing SVOD services having to take, learning some tricks from kind of the pay TV industry of how do you deliver content instead of delivering it all as one, at one time where you can binge. They're starting to drip the programming, weekly or so. Again, trying to address some of the challenges they see what consumers' behavior as consumers' behavior changes. But I look at it as going, it's not a the direction, it's not going back to what it was. It's going to something that's that's kind of evolved and is more consumer friendly. So people are getting a little bit of what they asked for, but all of a sudden, people don't like choice. At times they want, to pick for 1, 2, 3 things. Now they get to choose between, hundreds of things, and that creates a little bit of a headache for them. But again, it's going in a different direction than what we had previously.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think, well, we call it the bloated bundle. It's a pretty negative term as it is today, and so I think users have spoken. I think it's clear that they want something different. I think choice, Basil, to your point, is really important there, and it's choice with a little bit of an influence in terms of the importance of things like personalization and machine learning and helping make the right recommendation based on what you've watched or what your interests are. I think it's a balance between those things, and I think the consumer should have choice, especially when it comes to anything that's the business model in which they prefer to have their viewing experience in, and have the choice to sign up for individual a la carte services or bundles. I think that choice is really important. And then when it comes to the discovery of content, what's the role of recommendations and personalization? I think that's really critical to making a better user experience. You don't want to spend the majority of your time looking to find something to watch. Hopefully you can find it quickly, get interested in it, and start to consume that content and have that lean back experience. And so I totally agree. I don't think we're going back. I think it's almost hand in hand with what we're seeing with just what streaming is and the growth in streaming, the rocket ship growth of streaming, and it's not headed towards a world of back to sort of bundles and bringing in content that a user is not interested in or have not chosen to participate with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a time where one could think that you were at the point of the road where we could have gone that way. So imagine, when Disney came along and they could have said, look, I'm going to have my app, and if you want to have kids content, you pay half the price. And if you want to have, the series with Star Wars and The Mandalorian, whatever, then you pay something else. And I think that's how it started in the cable business. If you remember, the only reason why people thought they were overpaying is because they would see how much it costs for me to have these 10 extra channels about documentaries or 10 extra channels about sports. And then when you put all of that and you say you now need to pay for all of this, they'll go, but I think that costs, $10 extra. So if I don't want those channels, can I remove that from my bill? And when OTT services started, that was never the case. So everything in every single OTT service that we saw out there, things were just included. You never had Netflix splitting their catalog and saying you will pay an extra $5 for the extra content. That never happened. Even in Disney, they have pretty different content inside of their app, and they never did that. So I think in a sense, we could have gone back to that if there were a lot of services that would have started splitting their offers. And I think maybe having 4K and HD is the closest we got to that, because people needed to make a choice. So if you then force them and say, now you need to have 4K, maybe I would think, I don't have a 4K TV. Do I really need to pay for that? And that is, I think, something similar to the bloated bundle. But I totally agree. I don't think we went in that path. And in a sense, that's amazing for the customers. It means that they can actually pick what they like to watch. And if they don't like it, they'll cancel the subscription and they don't have it again. And I think this element of choice is something that I think is here to stay, and it's not going to go away. And people are just going to get used to that. It's going to be impossible to go back to a different model, I think.
So a couple of counters. And I'm curious as to what you guys think about these. So one is we see some virtual MVPDs, some of those that have larger bundles. Their prices are going up. They're not going up because they want the prices to go up. They're going up because of content costs related to that. In a sense, it feels like they're falling into the same challenge that traditional cable TV providers have had. So that's one element. A second, you're seeing films now come out and you have to have if you're going to watch those from home, you have to have a subscription to be able to see that, or even pay to get that. So over the PVOD, the premium video on demand. We're also seeing among some services where they're going to put some content in a free ad-supported approach, but then have different content in the subscription. So essentially, they are splitting their content into different layers of accessibility. So how does I'm trying to how does that jibe with the idea of, oh no, we're not going back to lack of choice, we're going to more choice? How do you reconcile those?
I'm happy to jump in on this. Obviously I'm not in the heads of each of these content providers and media companies and what they do, but from what I can see, it's really about testing and learning, right? These are not tried and true. These are not long-term, we're locked in for the next 10 years types of strategies. These are things where they're testing and they're learning, and they want to try these variations. What happens? What's the user sort of response? What's happening to our, to our business model? What happens to our long-term strategy? I really think it's an opportunity to try different things and learn from them. I think, even with the PVOD example behind the subscription behind the SVOD, we've seen back and forth from key content players saying they're in, they're out, they're in, and really not saying this is our long-term strategy. And so I think all the examples you gave are great examples of ways to sort of test out and learn and truly understand this space and continue to get better at providing the user with their best possible experience.
I would agree with Randy on, it's really interesting to see as these different services come out with different approaches, because I think, all services are watching and going, does that work? Does it not? Is that something we should look at? And so it is, some you already hear that, hey, it might not be working, that might not be the right approach, and let's see how long that stays. Well, other ones, if it works, then you'll start to see other services do it. The only counter I would say on this would be, talking about virtual MVPDs, right? They're in a different boat. And, this is something, obviously, FrndlyTV being a virtual MVPD, what we're trying to do differently is we're not trying to replicate traditional cable in terms of having all the channels for everyone. That's the problem they're all facing, is they're locked in these long-term deals, and their prices are going to keep going up and up. And, they're unfortunately replicating what people did not like, right? They're going to end up being this bloated service where it's very expensive. And so that, they would be the exception kind of to the rule of what we're talking about, is that choice is kind of being eliminated. What we're doing at FrndlyTV, that's why we're trying to take it a different approach, is we're trying to be extremely strategic, extremely smart with what we can offer and the price point, knowing that price point is critical. When you look at all these services, they all have price points that are very palatable from a consumer standpoint. When you start going into this, $20, $30, $40, $50, $60, $80 range, that's really where it's no longer impulse buy. It's no longer this where you see content, you're like, you know what, I'll sign up. It's a decision where you're like, can I afford this? And so that's going to be more challenging. What I like about the direction we're all heading is having these price points where, people, when there's weather events, right? People look at our service and goes, hey, I want the weather channel for $5.99. That's palatable for me. I can add it. And then they see there's a wide variety of content that they like. But when you're talking these higher price points, and unfortunately they're going to, Brett, as you mentioned, they're going to continue to face that challenge. And with so much other great content, you have to be more strategic and make sure that, again, we always remind ourselves, why did people cut the cord initially? I always go back to it. The number one thing was price. What's that value proposition? So making sure that you still maintain that is critical. And that's why we feel fortunate being a virtual MVPD, that we are doing things a little bit differently, and it's giving us an advantage that we're able to, again, be profitable, grow, and provide continuous value to our consumers.
I think, going to Brett's point, one of the things that I think about, and maybe this is like throwing more wood into the fire, but isn't it that this is maybe more of a where each of these content providers are in their story of growth, because I can imagine that people who have very specialized content. Imagine if you have someone who just does, for example, I don't know, content for pets, or someone who just does content for kids, then they're going to be highly specialized. If someone wants to have that type of content, they know they want that type of content. But if you look on the opposite side of people that have grown a lot, like you look at Netflix and you look at Amazon Prime, then they're looking at a lot of the segments, and they're saying, look, I need more content for kids because I'm not being able to compete on kids. So I'm going to have more for kids. And I also need to have some things for people who like documentaries and who like drama and sci-fi. And you get to a point where you say, isn't that these guys are going in the same direction? And you're going to look at Netflix, you look at it today, but imagine you look at it 5 years from today, and they have every single type of content that exists, every single category, but they had to increase their costs because they were just increasing and they have more and more production. So you get to the end, and isn't the Netflix and Amazons and the big SVODs out there, aren't they similar to what a cable subscription was a couple of years ago? Are they that different? And I think obviously choice is really important here, because you can just, you can stop the subscription where before you couldn't. But I wonder if it isn't just, a sign of where they are in their path. And if you get big enough, then it means that you need to look at all these different segments, I wonder.
Yeah, it's interesting in the consumer research that we've done, consumers will always say that they want choice. 100% of the time, they say they want choice. What they don't want is they don't want to have to make a decision. Making decisions are hard. And so I think in many cases, that's where, when you look at Netflix, it's not just a universe of content. Well, it is, but they're making a decision on a carousel. They're making, which of these 5 that come up do I want to watch, and can I? And so I think, thinking forward, I think where we're probably going is somewhere in between. I have an entire universe of choice and I'm forced to take these particular options. Something that narrows the choice and makes it an easier decision, but still provides a lot of freedom. And so with that, let me hit it right back over to our resident plumber, Eric. And Eric,
thank you.
Made it through choice, and we can continue there. You can take it on from there.
I appreciate the update. And to quote Chevy Chase and Fletch, you should see my shoes. No, I'm kidding. Everything's fine. But I would like to pick it up again by following up on something that Miguel brought up, which is, focusing on SVOD services. Has the growth in SVOD services hit a ceiling, or at least, and I think there's certainly research, there was a well-publicized Hollywood Reporter article about a year ago now already that talked about, consumers are willing to pay, what was the number? Something like $17 or something a month for SVOD services and no more.
Yeah.
How can SVOD services continue to compete in an increasingly crowded market, and when there's also free channels coming up, free FAST and AVOD services as well? And we could talk more about the AVOD and FAST, or maybe we just combine the discussion to the different business models and what's going to win out in the market. Miguel, you want to start with that?
Yeah. So I think, look, SVOD services, I think, are going to continue to grow. I think all the indications that I've seen point to a continuous rise in the number of SVOD services, something around like 30% over the next 5 years. And I think even if you look at the number of subscriptions that everyone has, there are reports that have different numbers, but, the lowest reports say, if you maybe last year were around, or this year were around 3.5 SVODs per person, that's going to increase to 4 or 5 over the next couple of years. But if you look at the lower ages, then you see that people are willing actually to have a lot more subscription services, and it goes up to 8 or 9 if you count all of the apps that you have on your phone. You're paying a subscription for them, especially if you look at teenagers. And so I think that SVOD services will continue to grow. Now, there is a discussion around, is there space for 8 or 9? And I find it funny. I think, if we were having this conversation maybe, 7 years ago, we would say, is there space for more than one? Or has Netflix caught all of the space? And then you had, another big guy coming in and say, oh, is there space for more than 2? And then, the discussion now, is there space for more than 3? I think there's space for a lot more, to be honest. I think there's space for people to make a choice about what they really enjoy. To be honest, the sports area is still not really materialized into a big SVOD. There are some in the US, there's some with the Zone in Europe, but I think there's still a lot to grow, and you're going to continue seeing that growth. And I think a lot of this will have to do with, are there platforms like Roku out there that will be able to make this aggregation such a simple experience that people give the opportunity to others to say, it's not just about the 3 main guys. I actually have shelf space and I can be one of the top 8, top 10. And in my view, I think there will be this like 2-tiered approach where you're going to have probably the guys that everyone knows and they're always in the top shelf. And maybe that's your top, 20, 30 of services that a lot of people watch. And then you're going to have like a second tier of things that are more specialized. And maybe a lot of those guys need to go for AVOD because they cannot afford to have a price tag associated. So I think we are going into a model where there's space to grow. There is still, I think, room for more people to be there and be a subscription that a lot of people take, and maybe a second tier for AVODs that will get their niche customers, but still space for that. So that's how I think growth is happening. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Miguel. I think there's still a ton of space for SVODs to grow. And I think you clearly pointed out that the trend line is increasing, right? And that's an important factor. And that's increasing in terms of the number of SVODs as well as the price that users are willing to pay in aggregate. And so that's a very healthy, positive sign. To your other point, I actually think that, and I agree with you. And I think that there is still space for AVOD and FAST and SVOD to live together. It's less about competing with each other and more about complementing each other. That's definitely one of the advantages of the Roku channel and its aggregated play is, I still prefer to watch my news live through a FAST channel today. I still like to consume content in many cases without ads, and I'll watch The Walking Dead on AMC Plus. And if the newest episode is not available because I already watched it, then I start to browse around and find things that may be ad supported. What's critical is that the user experience feels seamless. They feel like they've, again, back to choice, that they have that optionality to pick what they want and watch that piece of content. I think a key part about a strong AVOD experience, though, is the ad experience itself. And I think that sometimes gets underestimated. I think it's really important to have guidelines and policies like frequency capping. We have no pre-roll on our AVOD content as example, so you can go straight into the content. We have relevant ads being served to you as well, which I think it all makes for a better ad experience. And that willingness to move across business models and formats and choosing the best experience that you want across all those models is really important. I think is continues to be the future of what users want and viewers want.
I think, from a consumer standpoint and from like services like FrndlyTV, there's this belief it's like, oh, we're all competing. There's an element of, for example, I don't look at Netflix, I don't look at Disney as competition because we don't compete with them, right? Most consumers love those types of services. We look at it as complementary, is that people are trying to build their perfect bundle. And so, all these different services combined is really what creates that unique entertainment experience. And that's where, quite honestly, individual apps can't necessarily do that, especially when they're on the little bit smaller side. So that's where really, kind of like a Roku comes in and does that and provides that service for us. One thing I did want to comment is, I know, Miguel, you mentioned about, Netflix growing and their audience being so broad and their price going up. Are they replicating cable? The big difference is price. While they're doing that, yes, they've gone up, but they're a fraction of a cost of what the old cable bundles used to be. And so while they've done it in a way that still appeals to people. It's not turning them off, because it's still it's that value equation, right, is still there for them. And so I think that's always important. And with all these services, it's that value equation. If you are a smaller, whether it be SVOD, virtual MVPD or whatnot, are you providing that additional value that incentivizes someone to stay with the service? I know we talked about AVOD. For me, I'd love to get your take on AVOD as if an independent AVOD service versus one, for example, with Roku is how do you keep people engaged? How do you, that's the challenge with a subscription service, right? You're guaranteed at least some revenue. With a AVOD, with this explosion, I always wonder, how do you keep people while there's so many blowing up out there? It becomes a very difficult element, because you're pretty much competing show by show, movie by movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the quality of the content is one thing, but an area that we've been publicly speaking about and we're continuing to invest in is Roku Originals, right? And so when we think about acquisition of the Quibi library and bringing in Roku Originals, acquisition of This Old House and owning the entire IP and library there, we think those are unique opportunities to differentiate the AVOD experience within the Roku channel, and that's an area we want to continue to invest in and grow, and it's doing tremendously well for us, and we think that differentiator, to your point, is extremely important. I think there's the user experience side, which we I think we do an outstanding job around and continue to invest in as well. But then the content element is creating those other original content and those unique opportunities to then have that user experience and then get exposed and consume that differentiating content as well. And so, it's something that we continue to look at and feel is important to our long-term strategy.
Interestingly, what we're seeing is, in some ways, a number of SVODs are becoming much more AVOD-like in terms of engagement. Churn is not what it used to be. Churn is different. The original question was about is SVOD reaching a ceiling? And it's not reaching a ceiling. I mean, there's plenty of international growth left. There's plenty of US growth left. But what we're seeing in the pocketbook is consumers are now starting to hold on to one or two services really tightly. And among all of the others, they're swapping. They're swapping on whatever's hot. They're swapping on what does my wife want versus my kids or something like that. What are sports this month? So that churn is happening more and more often. And so in a real sense, rather than holding on to a consumer for a lifetime value over a long period of time, it's almost like there's this pool of money. And can I get my share by getting people to subscribe to me for longer during the year than for all of the others that are out there? And so that engagement is really important, where now SVODs are having to really prove to a consumer, you need to be with me past this original. You need to be with me beyond this one series.
Well, and that leads nicely into my next question, which was about the relationship with the consumer. We came from a world where pay TV companies owned the consumer, right? You had your, in most markets, you had very little choice about where to get your cable TV. You could choose satellite if you wanted, but once you establish that relationship, that cable company owned that consumer. Clearly, those cable companies are trying to win that consumer back, but have we left forever behind the world where, these small few numbers of pay TV companies own the consumer? Will OTT services own the consumer, or are those days completely over?
Well, I can start with that. Having worked most of my life in operator and cable companies, maybe I'm slightly biased, but this has been a big discussion around what is the value that an operator can bring when we're talking about the shifts in the market that we've just discussed. And it's super interesting to see if we all believe what we've been discussing here today, and that you'll have more and more SVOD services, and that most of these guys, at least the big guys, they don't talk with each other. So there's zero likelihood that Netflix will ever aggregate Amazon Prime, or that Disney will aggregate Amazon Prime. So there's a level out there that is not going to be able to aggregate one another. And if you think that that's true, then the opportunity for providers that can aggregate this, same way that Roku does, but imagine on a local scale, if you're a TV provider and you don't really know where your space is, this is your space. This is what you need to do. You need to be able to pick all these guys that don't talk with each other and put them on your platform. And then, yes, maybe you can do some discounts or whatever, but you need to be able to provide value for that. So I do believe that this owning the customer will be highly related with what value you could bring into that aggregation. And I can easily see that, imagine even in your competition locally in a country, if you are a customer that today sees all those services, can do search in all the services, can do maybe even voice search, they can do recommendations on top of that, and they have a single billing platform, how likely would that customer leave that for a service that doesn't have any of these capabilities? So I think that's going to be the true value of this. And I think it's going to be less about owning the customer relation. Most of these guys are still going to provide your internet access, and maybe they provide your telephone and whatnot. So most of these companies have quad play offers. So they will still own a big part of the relation with the customer. But I do think that it's going to be about what value they can bring. And if they can continue bringing value like this, I think they will have a part of that, not as strong as they had in the past, but I think there's a role for cable companies and IPTV companies to play into that.
What does it mean to own nowadays? I mean, does that mean that you have high retention, that they're always going to keep you? Does that mean you have control over their ad inventory and data? Does that mean that you are the marketplace that other people buy stuff through? So owning, when cable was like the only game in town and everything went through the set-top box, yeah, that's legitimate ownership at that point. You control all access points, all data, all everything, and you have them tied to a single billing relationship. But that's just so much less reality today. So, and I think that idea of what do you control and what do you own, that's a real sticking point in a lot of aggregation plays today, is who controls the data, who controls the revenue splits, who controls advertising inventory and things like that. And those really end up being the key elements that really are defining how a lot of aggregation happens or doesn't happen today.
Yeah, I think.
All right, we've got about, well, go ahead.
So I think just Brett nailed it on the head on that, is, that kind of definition, as an app ourselves, we always talk about what are the critical pieces for us to own. And it really comes down to, are we getting the right data to improve our service, to better manage the consumer? And so, there's certain elements, right? When we're on a platform, we might not own the billing relationship, but we might own the customer service relationship still. We might, but we're still getting the data to understand how the consumer is, what they're consuming and how they're consuming it. You go on, there's other services. If you, for example, get on Amazon channels, the problem is you lose a lot of that. You become you're no longer a B2C play, you become a kind of a B2B play. And that becomes a challenge where you're not even marketing really, right? You've given that control up and you start competing actually with that channel. So the dynamic changes. It depends on what you want and what's important to you as a service.
All right, I'd like to close. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I'm wondering if we could take this last question, and I'm going to ask each of you to answer it briefly in about 30 seconds each. vMVPDs arose as potential disruptors to the pay TV marketplace. What other companies or types of services do you see as having the potential to really be disruptors in the near and maybe long-term future. Brett, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 quick ones so I can steal the thunder from everybody right now. I think if Amazon comes in and offers free TV, that would be a crazy disruptor. Sports, whoever owns sports rights, that's a crazy. And more recently, I've seen Comcast offering a smart TV and Sky offering a smart TV. Those are really interesting plays, and those are some areas that we're looking closely at right now.
Well, and Amazon's offering a TV now too, or not offering, but selling a TV. And we can see where they're probably going with that. Randy.
Yeah, I won't name anyone in particular, but I think just platforms in general. I think we've been talking a lot about pay TV. We've been talking about MVPDs, vMVPDs. I think the platform is just where it's all going. It's the future of TV viewing. It's where streaming lives. I think a lot of the topics we talked about today is about platforms like Roku and the advantages and the benefits to the user that we bring. So I'll stop there and just say that platforms is really where it's going.
All right, Basil.
I'll definitely agree. The platforms looking long term, I agree is kind of a play. I have to, Brett kind of stole everything. I think he's right on those as well, which is great. Hey, I just get to feed off that. But also, I have to do a plug here for FrndlyTV is that, when you talk about virtual MVPDs, we might be small, but we are doing it differently. And I think that's something where the question becomes, can you offer TV for a very affordable price? And when you look at all the competition, they're facing a lot of challenges. They're constantly raising their prices. But can we do it where we maintain our economic advantage while providing a lot of value? I think that changes the dynamic and introduces something that maybe others might do as well.
All right, and the last word goes to Miguel.
So I think disruption can mean a lot of things, and one of them can be about the sheer scale or the process. And one of the things that we've seen until now is we've seen platforms from whoever can actually spend and afford to build those platforms. And one of the things that we're seeing now, particularly in Kaltura with the customers we have right now, is that if you get to the second and third tier of customers that maybe cannot afford to build their own platform, but they can come to a service like Kaltura and say, I would like to go direct to consumer. Can you do that for me? I think you're going to see the next 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 guys of media coming in, and that will potentially disrupt, I think, a little bit the market, because you're going to see people that were not in the space at all, and they can now afford to come into the video space. So I think that might disrupt the market a little bit.
All right. Excellent insights, everyone. Thank you so much. And thanks again, Brett, for taking over there for just a minute. I'd also like to thank our sponsors again, Conviva, Limelight Networks, Signient, Video Guys, and for this panel, Kaltura. The Amazon gift card winner is Maverick Chacon. So Maverick, watch your email for more information about that next week. And you can join us in 30 minutes when our next panel looks at the future of ad tech, which is something we touched on a little bit here, but it's something we're going to go on into much more depth on in 30 minutes. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
VideoGuys.com is your source for PTZ cameras that fit productions of all sizes.
Add multiple camera angles to your production without adding operator. Perfect for houses of worship, corporate AV, education, and more. Video Guys offers cameras from PTZ Optics, Bird Dog, Panasonic, and NewTek. Control these cameras using an IR remote, control app, or hardware controller with serial or network connection.
Go to VideoGuys.com or call us at 800-323-2325 for help finding the camera that's right for you.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.